Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Paramanam Samparibrajagacharya Stakare Small Nam Saraswati Swami Bhagavad Jaya Nanda Gori Vaishnava Jaya Ramacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Jaya Names of the whole Sri Krishna Shri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Kund Radha Kund Giri Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Navadip Dham Ki Jaya Ganga Mai Ki Jaya Jamuna Mai Ki Jaya Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jaya Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jaya All glories to the All glories to the Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please unmute yourself to be able to speak something. Your mic is off. Can you please unmute your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you very much. You are welcome to.
What is this wonderful? What is this wonderful place behind you?
Is in Uganda, Africa.
Beautiful.
Hare Krishna, you are welcome to Hare Krishna platform for today's class. So I was trying to see your biography in ISKCON world leaders. Only your picture was there. There was nothing written. So I don't know how to introduce you, except to say you are a proper disciple that stays in Vrindavan from Germany. So maybe you can introduce yourself by yourself, whatever you want. Then we can start the class. I will put the verse on the screen. Then we can start.
I see you, and I see myself also.
Yes, it's good. It's like that. Just go on to speak. Now I'm going to share the verse on the screen. Prabhupada have already chanted the Radha Madhava, only the slokas, the translation and purport. Then we continue.
This is the first time that I hear that I have to lecture on this particular shloka. Anyway, okay. I have some idea about this. Shall I start speaking?
Yes, go on. Yes, Maharaj, just go on.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhus and ladies, it is very nice to speak to you. I have been in Africa maybe in the 40 years ago almost. My son had pneumonia, and I was living in an island which is very damp. And so our GBC, Jai Theatre at that time, he said I should go to Mombasa because it is dry and hot. And so I was there for 3 months. Now Yogendra Swami we shared a room. And we were in this temple near the tusks, these huge elephant tusks over the street. Many of you may know. And it was a wonderful experience. It took only something like 5 minutes, 3 minutes even, to go to the ocean. Morning sun came up, wonderful. And we had a wonderful time in Africa. Now, coming to this verse that you just showed me, can you show me again?
Yes.
So there's this verse, Jakva, Swadharma, Charan Bujam Harer, Bhajan Api, Bhajan Apak Vuti Patit, Yatato Yadi, Yatra Kvavadam Amushakim, Kuvato, Apto, Bhajatam, Swadharma Taha. And we go right to the text. One who has forsaken his material occupation to engage in devotional service may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage. Yes, there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. Hare Krishna. So let me see the purport. Can you scroll down? Some noise here. One second. Should I read the purport? Hare Krishna?
Can you hear me? Yes. Purport is there on the screen.
Should I read the purport, or did you do this already?
Yes, you read the purport also.
You did?
You read the purport yourself.
As far as the duties of mankind are concerned, there are innumerable duties. Every man is duty bound not only to his parents, family members, society, country, humanity, or living beings, the demigods, etc., but also to the great philosophers, poets, scientists, etc. It is enjoined in scripture that one can relinquish such duties and surrender unto the service of Krishna. So if one does so and becomes successful in the discharge of his devotional service unto Krishna, it is well and good. But it so happens that sometimes that one surrenders himself unto the service of the Lord by some temporary sentiment. And in the long run, due to so many reasons, he falls down from the path of service by undesirable association. There are many such instances in human history. Bharat Maharaj was obliged to take his birth as a stag, which is a deer, due to his intimate attachment to the deer. He thought of this deer when he died. As such, in his next birth, he became a deer, although he did not forget the incident of the previous birth. Similarly, Chitraketu also fell down due to offenses at the feet of Shiva. But in spite of all this, the stress is given to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord, even if there's a case of fall down. Because even if one falls down from the prescribed duties, devotional service will not be forgotten by the lotus feet of the Lord. One who engaged in even a small quantity of devotional service can save himself from the most dangerous position. There are many examples of such. There are many instances of examples in history. Ajamil is one of them. Ajamil in his early life was a devotee, but in his youth he fell down. Still, he was saved by the Lord at the end. Does everybody hear?
Yes, everybody's hearing you. No problem.
You can hear, right?
Everybody, yes. It's good.
So here is discussed what happens when a devotee falls. And this is a common phenomenon. This is not unusual at all. Prabhupada had so many disciples, but he told us, once I leave, he said, most of my disciples will go back where they came from. And that's very true. I mean, I'm now in Krishna consciousness since 48 years. So that's that's quite a long time. And I'm still going. And so let me tell you, there's one Irish poet. He's very famous. He's lived about 100 years ago or something. His name is Oscar Wilde. And he was a wild man. He did many things. But he was an excellent poem, and he had one saying that is very valuable. He made many, he was a writer also. He had many wonderful sayings. And so one of these sayings was that every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. It's actually wonderful if you think about it. Every saint has a past, because nobody becomes a saint unless he gets this particular kripa from Krishna. But nobody becomes a saint from one day to another. When we see that some of our devotees are very advanced, then I can see that they're much more advanced than myself because of their previous life. So even, say, a musician like Mozart, everybody of you may have heard about Mozart, he was able with 4 years to write beautiful music, with 4 years. And the amazing thing about him was that in all his music that he wrote throughout his life, there's never any correction. There's no musician like that. We are always correcting and correcting and correcting. But he never had one correction. He was asked by the king, how can you do that? How is that possible? And he said, well, I'm not writing. I'm not composing this music. He said, I hear the dictation from some place. So it was a super soul. You know, he admitted that. It comes from outside. I just sit down. I'm actually a secretary, he said, you know. And so that's why it's clear that there was a perfect musical talent behind it, who actually composed this music. And Albert Einstein also, he was able to write, to solve mathematical equations, when he was only 4 years old. And it goes on and on and on. Prabhupada said that this musician, Ravi Shankar, that he was a musician 7 times in his life. And one may say, well, in the end, he got what he wanted. That's true, but it's not. this kind of attachment to music is not very valuable. It's valuable if you use that music in Krishna's service. But if you use it for entertainment, even if I'm the greatest of entertainers, which is not coming to you from one life to the other, then by the end, when you die, what you get, you come back as a musician. It's not a blessing, it's a curse. You see the point? Again, he takes birth, again, he's a musician. Again, he takes birth because he's so attached to being a musician. So we also have our attachments, and we should move these attachments towards Krishna. It's very important. And so in this endeavor, like Krishna says, there is no loss. Nehavikrama nashrusti pradhyana vidyati swalpama pyasya dharmasya trayati mato bayat. In this endeavor, there is no loss, and even a little progress can save a man from the greatest type of fear. So whatever we do for Krishna is not lost, even if we make a mistake, because Krishna is, he is Bhava Grahi Janardana. He sees only the good of a devotee. Like, say a father. If you're a father and your little boy, 3 years old, what the heck is going on here? I'm going to organize this here. So, like a father, when his son brings him 2 left shoes, the father is happy about it because he knows his son is not very bright. He's just a little boy of 3 years. But why is he happy about it? There's nothing he can do with 2 shoes, because he appreciates the love as this child comes and in love gives the father something. So in the same way, Krishna, we are imperfect, but whatever we give to Krishna, he doesn't see the dark side of the moon. The moon has a bright side and dark side, and so every human being has also a bright side and there's always a dark side. That's why people don't like to talk about it. They like to praise themselves, but they don't like to talk about the dark side, which is very often there, unless one is a pure devotee. Then one is illuminated from all sides. There's a dark side. So now, even though it's a dark side, that's why this process of devotional service is so important, because one gradually rises to the mode of goodness and ultimately to bhava and to prema. As Rupa Goswami said that Ado Shraddha, in the beginning there's faith, then sadhu sango, we are associating with devotees, next step. Then bhajana kriya, we engage in service, bhajan, and kriya, that means devotional activities, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, praying, etc. And then we come to anatta nivriti. Anatta nivriti is interesting because we become purified from all sinfulness. See, in the Christians, for them to become free from sin is a major issue. People, although they don't have much faith in God, they pray to God because they want to go to heaven, basically speaking, right? There's no idea of serving God. There's the idea to enjoy God. It's a difference between enjoying God or serving God. So when we actually are coming to Agyata Sukriti, then it is of our sinful life is finished, actually, when this is really done well, when we really in Agyata performed Agyata Sukriti. So the whole message of Christianity is really to become free from sin and then go to heaven. But to become free from sin is not a big thing, actually. Even Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Sarva Dhamman Parijajya Mamekam Saranam Braja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papabhyo. There it is. I free you from all sin. And so it is stated also that by chanting a single time the name of Krishna, more sins are forgiven than we are able to commit. More sins are forgiven. So the process of forgiving sins is not actually important. It's just one stage. Even if you have no sin, that doesn't mean you go to Goloka. Even if absolutely you're free from sin, from material desire, that doesn't mean you go to Goloka. For that, you have to go further. There's Ruchi, taste, spiritual taste. There's Ashakti, that we become detached. Then there is Bhava, that preliminary love of God. And then there's pure love of God, prema, premanjana churita bhakti. When the eyes are anointed with the ointment of love, then yam shamasundaram achintya guna swarupa, we can see the wonderful form, achintya guna swarupa, the inconceivable form of Shyam, achintya rupa. So what was this verse again? It's in Brahma Samhita. And you see, so that I think personally that Christianity is, there's a difference you should understand between Jesus and Christianity, because Christianity is the interpretation of Jesus. The tendency of human beings is always to add something. You know, we see this in our own movement sometimes. This is added, that is added, this, that. So gradually, the message got distorted. The essential message is that you should love your Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Now, if somebody gets that, is able to do that, then he is definitely on the transcendental platform. That you serve God, love God. This is our philosophy. To love God with all one's heart, with all one's soul, with all one's mind, with all one's strength. That is actually the essence of the teachings of Jesus. The rest is that theology. It says, you know, he died out of this reason, that reason, etc. You know, so the process of forgiving sins is not difficult, actually. Even if one chants one mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, very carefully, actually is free from sin. So, as this Oscar Wilde said, that every saint has a history. That means it is not from one day to another that he became a saint. There's one famous saint, Saint Augustine. Has anybody heard about him? Saint Augustine? He's a famous saint in the Catholic tradition, in the 14th century or something, a great philosopher. And even although people considered him so saintly, one of his famous saying was, Lord, send me chastity. That means freedom from sin, freedom from sex, particularly. Send me freedom give me chastity, but not yet. That means he was not finished. He said, Lord, give me chastity, but not yet. So he wanted to enjoy just a little bit more sex life. And so, nevertheless, I'm sure if you continue, if we continue our life in Krishna consciousness, then gradually we come through all these stages from Adhushraddha all the way to Prema. You know, there's one step in between, there's faith. Adhushraddha, Sadhusanga, Vajana Kriya, Anataniriti, and then there's Nishta. So Nishta is important because there are two types of Nishta. One Nishta is in the beginning, Adhushraddha, faith. And then after going through purification, we come to Nishta. That means realized faith. You see, there are two Nishtas, basically speaking. One is in the beginning, somebody comes to the temple, and he's happy that he can come to the temple and he doesn't have to worry about Idam. What is this guy, Idam, the famous man-eater in Uganda? He reminds me that I see that picture there. He doesn't have to worry that he meets Mr. Amin. What is his name? Idam Amin. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, his name is India Amin. India Amin.
Yeah, India Amin, okay.
India Amin, the former president of Uganda.
Exactly. So we don't have to worry about that when we come to the Hare Krishna movement, that somebody is going to cook us in oil. There's some faith there that we will survive it. And so they go, and then they hear that the philosophy is very logical. it makes a lot of sense. I remember when I was a young boy, my brother died of cancer. It was terrible. It took years till he died. His head was opened 3 times, take a piece out, etc. And when he finally died, it was finally, because all we were happy that he died, because it was such a suffering for the kid and for my mother also. So when he died, the priest came, and he just had died, and the priest was standing at the bed, at the end of the bed where the feet were, and I asked him, Father, I was only 10 years old. I asked him, Father, why? Why does God allow this? Where's God in all this? And he said, I don't know. I said, but I mean, it says in the Bible, oh, as you sow, you shall reap. There seems to be some, but he was innocent. How do you understand this? Now I became an atheist initially because he couldn't give me an answer. Most people become atheists because the religion cannot answer these questions in the Western world. As soon as you say there's only one life, you cannot explain why the innocent suffer. You cannot. The whole world is full of suffering. If you go, just wars. People have been making wars since the beginning of creation, on this planet also. Then there's genocide, that people die in genocide like the Jews in the concentration camp. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's nothing. Just Mao Zedong wiped out 40 million people. No, 100 million people. Stalin wiped out, 40 million people. And so thousands of people die at every moment of famine, like in some part of Africa on the East Coast. Forgot what it is. Die of famine, there's no food. And then there is virus, there's the plagues. And then people die in the hospital, even if they are on a breather, they die a terrible death. And so if you look at this a little bit, this world is awful. Awful, there's so much suffering. There's a German general. He was asked recently on television in Germany, what will happen when the bomb drops? Now you don't have to be worried about it, stay in Africa. Nobody drops a bomb on Africa. But in Western countries, you have to be very worried, and in Russia, in these countries. So his answer was, when the bomb drops, he said, there's nothing you can do. He said, one thing you should know, the living will envy the dead. Think about that. The living, those who survive, will envy the dead because their life is finished. They are burned of huge diseases. We get cancer and so on. So he said that I was shocked when I saw that. He said, living will envy the dead. And so the world is like this, my dear Prabhus and ladies. This is very, history is written in blood. In blood. And different religions have killed so many people. Mind you, there's a difference between religion and religion is pure. Religion really means to love God. When religion becomes affected by lust and by anger and by greed, then it becomes religious imperialism. And it is by religious imperialism that all of South America, practically speaking, was wiped out by Portuguese and Spanish. And there was always a priest there, and they were all converted. Unless you convert, you can live, otherwise you die. And this has been going on all over. You know how many people got killed in India? Well, 80 million to 100 million people were killed through the invaders. I don't have to be specific about it, who the invaders are. Everybody knows. I just say the invaders because I don't want to wake up with a bread knife in my neck, in my back. So in any case, so go back to Oscar Wilde. I find this very intriguing that every saint has a history. And so you can see even in Vedic time that many people became saintly in their previous lives. They were horrible, they were hunters and whatnot, a prostitute in the case of Haridas Thakur. And still, by the mercy of Haridas Thakur, she became a great saint. And in the same way, we cannot expect that from one day to another, we're going to be saints. That takes time. But the key is, in this whole thing, Prabhupada once told us that failure is a pillar of success. You see, if you make a mistake, that mistake is only a mistake if you don't make an effort to repair it. If you repair it, it's not anymore a mistake, you know? Like say, for example, I steal your money. And so I'm upsetting you. I do something wrong to you. Now, you meet me and you say, how are you? I said, well, I'm fine. Can we talk about something else? So they talk about that. He tried to talk about politics or something. And the guy said, before you talk, give me your money back. That's the first step, right? If you want to repair that. Because see, if you make a mistake that affects others, first of all, we have to understand that what I did is terrible. First step is realization. Next step is remorse, that I feel bad. Next step is reparation, that you repair. And the last step is then we can sing and dance in kirtan, but not before. It's not that you take somebody's money away and then you say, well, let's dance in kirtan. Say, hey, hold on. That's a little bit too fast. First, you don't feel even remorse. You don't feel even sorry about it. And I don't know how you feel remorse. And now, what to speak of reparation, give me your money back, then we can dance in kirtan, right? So we have to understand there's a way to do everything. If you commit an offense, there's a way to undo this. And if I give the money back and excuse myself to the person that I took your money, I'm very sorry. You know, I didn't think of it. I was not thinking, you know, of the karmic involvement. Then it gives the money back, and then you feel remorseful, you realize it was wrong, you repair the damage, and then we can sing and dance in kirtan, not before. If you leave any of these steps out, the redemption will not be perfect. And so on the path of devotional service, we will experience a lot of difficulties, sometimes from others, sometimes from the body, and sometimes from the devas, from demigods. But we should understand that Krishna is always protecting us in all situations, even dramatic situations. You know, I remember maybe in 1975 or so, you were all old people at that time, and I was young. And now you're young and my body is old, right? The table has turned. And so we drove on Sankirtan, and it was a rainy day, so the highway was very wet. And then somebody went on the brake in front of us. And so we had to go on the brakes, and our car started turning. And the car was thrown over some bushes quite high and rolled 3-4 times. And it ended up like this on the side, right? Like this. You see this? Like this. It was standing on the side. And I said to this boy underneath there, Chakravarti Prabhu said, "Oh, Chakravarti, okay?" He said, "Yes, I'm okay. What about yourself?" I said, "I'm okay as too." So we walked out of the windscreen, and I said to Chakravarti, "You see these people there?" And there was 100 people had stopped their cars and was watching us in horror. And I said, "Let's go." We took our book bag and we said, we approached the first person and, "Did you see this accident?" "Yes." "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm okay, but you're not okay. You should read this book to understand how." The police came and said, "For God's sake, what happened? How did you survive this?" You know, I said, "Well, here's the answer. You know, read this book, Bhagavad Gita, and then you understand how to survive under all circumstances." The ambulance came, and I sold them 3 books. So we sold a ton of books, because we were protected by Krishna. Krishna can do anything. And even in Hare Krishna movement, it saved me a couple of times from death, this close. And so Krishna is watching us. He sees what we are doing, and we can be completely convinced that our endeavor will never be unsuccessful. Even if there may be some setbacks. There are so many setbacks, and so many devotees who got setbacks in Srimad Bhagavatam, but they keep on going. They didn't back out. If you back out, if you leave this challenge to become Krishna conscious at any stage, then this is your misfortune. And Prabhupada told us that, he said, many of my disciples who don't continue the process of Krishna consciousness, he said they will go to heaven. Because your activities, which is, on a particularly when you preach, highest level of devotional service, turns to mundane piety. The result of it is mundane piety if you don't continue, and you go to heaven. And in heaven, it's more difficult to practice spiritual life because everything is so easy. Like for example, we experience that in South Europe, it's much more difficult to practice Krishna consciousness because the weather is so nice. Even in Croatia, in one town in the north, people are much more serious than in south, where they just lie on the beaches. You see? So in heaven, it may be an advantage in terms of weather, but beyond that, and there's heavenly music, and there are beautiful women and beautiful men, and everything is song and dance. But to be serious about Krishna consciousness, the easiest way is, most people come by suffering. They come, Chatu, Vida, Bhajantimam, 4 people come to me, and one is those who suffer. And so my father was telling us that he was in a concentration camp. He was he was in resistance to Hitler. And so he told me that, before the war, he said, we had so many Bibles, nobody read them. Nobody read the Bible. In the concentration camp, there was only one Bible. And people were, a long line of people there who wanted to just read it for one day, and they had to give one cigarette to the owner of that Bible. And it was very difficult to get a cigarette in the concentration camp. And he said, so everybody became conscious of his suffering, praying to God, and everyone wanted to read the Bible. And as soon as the war was over, nobody read the Bible. So many people join because of suffering, and many people leave when the suffering is ceasing. They go away again. But on the other side, there are also people who get really kicked by Krishna into shape and continue this process. Like I went through a huge trauma before I came to Krishna consciousness. But then I realized that life is meant to serve God, to love God and to serve him. And before I was even in contact with the movement. And so this is actually the solution. In the beginning, there's some realization. And then from there we continue. And even if there are mistakes, we should always continue. We should try A, to repair the mistakes if that's possible, as much as possible. And B, we have to continue our Krishna conscious life. And even if you leave, you must come back sooner or later anyway, because you cannot stay in the material world forever. So you might as well stay, or stay at least close to the devotees. Very important, because here you see the deities in the temple. That means you associate with Krishna. And here you hear the Bhagavatam class. And I give you an example. There's one sannyasi. His name is Chandramani Maharaj. And I asked him recently if I can talk about this. There was a situation. He is a very staunch sannyasi and a great preacher. So he reads Srila Prabhupada's books regularly, and for 2, 3, or 4 hours sometimes. And he said, so one time I was reading Krishna book loud, and then all of a sudden the situation changes. And it was like somebody turns on a tape recorder. Prabhupada was speaking. And Prabhupada was speaking for him for about 3, 4 pages. It was amazing. Prabhupada was there. We say, Prabhupada used to say, I'm in my books. There are many experienced devotees have, including myself, that Prabhupada is actually here, that he's not gone. He reasons they will think that Vaishnava dies while he's still living in sound. And so by hearing Bhagavatam class or by reading Krishna book or Bhagavatam or whatever, we are actually in touch with Prabhupada as much as we are in touch with Krishna. When we see the deities, our eyes become purified when we see the deity. And in the same way, when, what is the other example? When we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, of course, we are in the presence of the Lord. That the Hare Krishna mantra is the most important ingredient in Krishna consciousness, was told by Lord Chaitanya, that it is the greatest treasure we have. In fact, chanting, according to our Haridas Thakur, is the most important activity in the whole universe. Think about that. So we may be poor boys living here or there, but we are engaged in the most important activity in the whole world. In the whole world, he said, because when we chant nicely and are aware of our chanting, not that we are when chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, that doesn't help us. You know? And you can see this, you know, oh, forgot, Hare Krishna. And so that happens as soon as we start chanting, that our mind runs away. Why is that? If you analyze this, the mind is running away because we ran away from Krishna originally. We came from the spiritual sky. You know, we ran away, and we are running away from Krishna. As soon as we are chanting, we're running away. And we're looking into the material world and we're seeing so many things. This is here, this is somebody, friend is there, you wave him. And then a car is coming, you look at this car, brand new car, etc. So our mind becomes deviated because we're looking towards the material world. Now, if you turn around and turn to Krishna, we don't even see the material world. Okay? I cannot see this window I looked to before. Simply by turning around from the material life to the spiritual goal, namely Krishna. Krishna Suya Sama Maya Hayanakara. Krishna is sunshine and Maya is darkness. Where there's sunshine, there's no question of darkness, you know. So when we chant nicely, then we associate with Krishna. He's right there. But unfortunately, we are not there. He is there. You know, many times at least we are spaced out. It's like you invite somebody to come to you. Say you have a friend, and you invite him, and he comes to your door, he rings a bell, no answer, and then he sees there's signs there. I'm going for lunch. How do you feel? He's inviting you, you come all the way, and there's a sign on the door, out to lunch, you know. How do you feel? You know, it's not very personal. It's not very friendly to Krishna. He is not different from his name. We know the philosophy. So we have to act accordingly and make an endeavor to chant nicely. Means to concentrate, you know, to concentrate, to bring the mind back to our chanting all the time. And so then gradually, things take a different dimension. I can tell you in my own life, when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I was in a shock that they were chanting 16 rounds. I joined in the morning by 9 o'clock, I came to the temple, and GVC at that time preached to me wonderfully. And so I said after half an hour, would you shave my head? He said, yes, let's go. So we went into the shower room, and all the devotees came and chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. They were so happy. And he gave me beads. And he said, you should chant the Hare Krishna, you know the Hare Krishna mantra? Yes, chant this on these beads. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So I chanted a couple of mantras, and he said, I did it. He said, no, this is just the beginning. You have to chant at least a round. He said, how long does that take? He said, well, about an hour. And so I chanted. And then I asked him, am I done? This is everything, right? He said, no. You have to chant 16 rounds. By that time, I became really worried that I could do that. Whereas today, it is something what we do. So in due course of time, and it takes a lot of time, and you go through many errors and mistakes, it is impossible to avoid it. Living entity is imperfect, has imperfect senses, and etc., etc. There are 4 defects of the living entity. And so we undergo mistakes, there is no doubt about it. And we make mistakes, we make failures, no doubt about it. It's part of the game. It is part of our journey. Don't be upset about things that happened in the past. It is not significant. Important is what you do now. In the past, Prabhupada used to say to us, the past is the past. The future, the past is history, Prabhupada said. The past is history. The future is a mystery. It means there's no use to worry what happens tomorrow, because anything can happen, And he said, and the presence, the now and here, is a present. It's a gift. Because in the presence, you can actually experience, only in the presence you can experience Krishna. One who sees Yumam Pashyati Savatra Savam Chamai Pashyati. Tasyam na pranashami sachamina pranashati. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost to him, and is he ever lost to me. You just have to go sit down somewhere, maybe in a forest. 1 second, there's somebody there. I have to excuse me, there's a postman is there. I'm coming. PRABHU? Parcel. Yeah, you have to bring this because I'm in a conference. I'm in this video conference. I cannot move. Just come in my room. Unless he wants to see me. Yeah. If he wants to see me, he has to come. So where did I stop? What was the last thing? Remember that?
You said that the future is a mystery and the present is a gift.
It's a gift because Krishna is in the present, yes. And if you sit down anywhere in a park and you meditate about that everything that happens right now, there's nothing but Krishna. Like Prabhupada, I happened to be in his room the last 3 weeks of his life. And so I saw a lot of things how Prabhupada left gradually. And that's another lecture I could give sometimes to you about Srila Prabhupada. And from the beginning to the end. And so just before he left his body, all of a sudden his hand came up like this, very peacefully, didn't tremble, my hand is trembling, his hand was not trembling. And he said, and it took him about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, he said very slowly, could hardly hear it, we all bent to Prabhupada, he said, everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. Everything moving, there's nothing but Krishna. So it became clear to me that he was in a very high state. I knew this all the time, but it showed he understood, whatever happens, there's nothing but Krishna. He saw Krishna everywhere. Yomam Pashyati Savatra. And so we can do a little exercise sometimes. You sit in a chair, or anywhere, maybe in a street or a park or so, then what do you hear in this consciousness that everything is Krishna? You hear a dog barking, that is Krishna. You hear some airplane flying over, that is Krishna, the pilot is guided by the super soul. You hear some birds singing, that's also Krishna. And you see some people fighting in the background, that's also Krishna. And you can go on and a car drives by, that's also Krishna, because Krishna is Nobody can drive this car unless he's helped by the super soul. So you can, if you meditate like this, it's just a personal experience, you go actually into a state of meditation, because you just listen, you know, and try to hear whatever there is as Krishna. And it's a wonderful experience you can do every time alone. And so these are the facts that Krishna is everywhere and everything is done to him. In the ultimate issue, there's only Krishna. We are all his parts and parcels. And the creation is the external energy. That's also Krishna. And so what is the verse? Bahunam Jamanamate Jnanam Prapadyati Vasudeva Savamiti Sahamas Sudulabha. That after many births, Bahunam Janma Jnanam Prapadyati. A person who is learned, he surrenders unto me. Jnanavan, he surrenders unto me. Why? Because he has realized Vasudeva Savamiti, that I'm everything. Vasudeva is everything. Samahatma Sudulabha, such a soul is very rare. So that you came to Krishna consciousness, that is already very rare. You know, I mean, how many of your friends from school are in the Hare Krishna movement? Anybody has a friend who's in the Hare Krishna movement? I don't. You know, from kindergarten, I remember some people from kindergarten. I remember some people from what do you call it? General school, primary school. I remember when I went to gymnasium, that's high school, basically speaking. I remember very vividly my time in the university and the different people. None of these people actually made it in Krishna consciousness. Everybody, most of our devotees came alone with a shirt on their back, practically speaking. That means they didn't have anything anymore. And so the Hare Krishna movement is actually a very special club. Not everybody can come to the temple. Even if they come, they leave. They can't do anything with it. So if we have some taste for Krishna consciousness and we come to the temple, Samahama Sudulabha, such a soul is very rare. And so we can be very much enthused that some or other Krishna has been calling me. And so I'm in this movement, in the Hare Krishna movement. And so from there, from the initial stage of practicing Krishna consciousness to Vaikuntha will take some time. Like Oscar Wilde again, that he said that every saint has a history and we go through many errors, you know, through many failures, so many things, it's unavoidable. Because Maya is very powerful. And Krishna knows that, it's his Maya. It's extremely powerful. But what we have to do is we have to continue on this path and never ever be discouraged on this path. That's the most important thing, never be discouraged. Always understanding that we actually are fortunate. Although we may be miserable sometimes, although we may not be very impressed of ourselves, of our performance in Krishna consciousness, that is a good thing. That is a good thing that we are not impressed by our performance, because everything is ultimately done by Krishna anyway. But the fact is that if we continue, then for sure, it is just a matter of time. It's up to us that we will go back to Godhead. And for some people it's easier because of their previous life. They had a rich spirit, maybe a rich spiritual life in the past. You know, I asked Prabhupada one time, I was translating Bhagavad Gita. It was the same cover. This was the first Bhagavad Gita that we had. And I translated together with Satchidananda Swami and who was else there, Gauravani Maharaj, in Heidelberg. And so then we met Prabhupada, and there was one verse in Bhagavad Gita which comes from Bhagavatam. And in that Bhagavatam says that one who chants the holy name, he has taken bath in all the holy rivers of India. He has visited all the places of pilgrimage, and so on and so on. And I asked Prabhupada, does it mean that in my last life I was in India? Prabhupada smiled. He said, well, maybe, because this This verse is actually directed to the people of Bharatvarsha. You know, somebody in India, they know if somebody becomes a saintly person, he has taken baths in all the holy rivers, you know, you're in this category. So then I asked him, how did I get here? He said, because, very important, he told me personally, because I have created you good fortune. I have created you, and this is Prabhupada. If you look at your life, he has created our good fortune. No doubt about it, you know. Without Srila Prabhupada, there wouldn't be anybody in this movement. In fact, the Hare Krishna movement wouldn't exist even without Prabhupada going to the West. He definitely created our good fortune. He used to go to Africa as well. He liked it. He sent Brahmananda to Africa for a long time. He was there. And he saw so many temples in his life. He saw so many temples rising. When he was a little boy, an astrologer told his father that this boy will build many temples. And the father told him, but he couldn't understand it. He was just a young boy. But in due course of time, he came into the position of being able to be empowered by Krishna to distribute his knowledge all over the world. Now, I asked the question, was in my past life? And Prabhupada said, I created you good fortune. So what about Srila Prabhupada? Was he in his past life a great soul? Well, one time Srila Prabhupada was sitting with Bhavananda. Bhavananda Prabhu told me personally. He said, he was sitting together and he told him that I didn't want to come here. Krishna told me you should go. Please go into the material world and preach Krishna consciousness. And he said, I really didn't want to go because I was in anxiety to go into the material world. And Krishna said, don't worry, I help you. I help you. And so from there we can understand, because Prabhupada was thoroughly honest, that he actually came from the spiritual world. He's like Vaikuntha man, as sometimes somebody, I don't know who it was, said he was a Vaikuntha man, came to save us and to give us this valuable devotion service, deity worship, that we can actually see Krishna, we can bow down in front of Krishna, we can decorate Krishna, we can sing for Krishna, we can cook for Krishna, so many things. And he gave us book distribution and books that we can take enlightenment from reading Prabhupada's books. And he gave us so many, the whole process of devotion. So how much time do I have left?
Yes, Maharaj, you have 5 minutes left, so you can take questions.
Okay, let's do questions. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you. I hope you like the presentation. What are the questions?
Please, anyone has question, can you raise your hand? But I have my first question when you mentioned about Prabhupada said any of his disciples who didn't go back to Godhead, they will go to heaven. And we know that the heaven is part of the material world. And Srimad Bhagavatam said that the Guru will come back to the material world to save the last of his disciples.
Yeah.
So when disciples of Prabhupada go to heaven, that means Prabhupada is not going back to Krishna until he saves all his disciples.
Well, you know, there are different theories. You know, this question we have to put in front of Srila Prabhupada. Because he knows the answer, you know. And you're laughing, but the fact is, many times I ask Srila Prabhupada something, and it takes about a couple of weeks or so, all of a sudden the answer pops into my brain, you know, because it's a super soul who hears it, and he's a representative of the super soul. So if we are in trouble, in any case, we have to go to, not to Krishna, we have to go to Lord Nityananda, not even Lord Chaitanya, because Nityananda is even more merciful than Krishna himself, more merciful than Krishna and Srimati Radharani, and then Radharani and Krishna become one in Lord Chaitanya, and in the Panchatattva it is actually Nityananda, Balaram, who is the person to approach. We have to do this. Whenever you're in trouble, don't try to solve your problem yourself. If you can do it, fine, but more intelligent, if you're in doubt, you have to ask either a devotee that you trust, or you have to simply turn to Lord Nityananda. When Prabhupada installed the deities here in Vrindavan, I'm in Vrindavan since February. I got stuck here, but I have a nice apartment here since a long time. And so when they installed the deity, Srila Prabhupada said, now, after that, he spoke to the devotees who worked very hard. He said, now you can go to Nityananda. If you have any kind of trouble, you go to Nityananda, ask him, and he will help you. And that's also my experience, that we have to go to Nityananda if there's any problems. If you cannot get an answer in the material world by our friends, for example, or even maybe our guru may not be able to give you an answer, or we don't have a guru, then we should approach Lord Nityananda. And this takes some time, you know, when Prabhupada tells you something, that takes some time. It's not from one moment to another. Prabhupada always in situations that he was not clear, he always go back to Krishna and ask. We know this. Is that right?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, okay, thank you. In the purport of the verse, there was a story of Chitraketu offending Lord Shiva. Can you give explanation about that Chitraketu story?
What was that?
Chitraketu, in the purport of today's verse, Prabhupada mentioned that Chitraketu fell due to his offense at the feet of Lord Shiva. So I was saying, is it possible to give the story of Chitraketu, how he offended Lord Shiva?
Well, you know, Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava, you know, like Prabhupada is the greatest Vaishnava. So we should not ask Srila Prabhupada for boons. In the same way, we shouldn't ask Shiva. If somebody worships Shiva, you shouldn't ask Shiva only one boon, namely, please bring me to Krishna. That's the way, you know, and Shiva will be very happy, you know. So we should not worship the demigods in generally. And Shiva is, of course, in a different category of an ordinary demigod. He is, in the spiritual world, Shiva is called Sada Shiva. And he lives half in the material world and half in the spiritual world. And when he manifests himself in the material world, then he becomes Rudra. And so therefore he's not an ordinary person, he's an expansion of Sada Shiva who's in the spiritual world. And so one time the devotee asked Prabhupada, can we worship Ganesh? And Prabhupada said, only if you ask Ganesh to help you to sort out your spiritual life. He's known to help people if they make mistakes in spiritual life or if they have some problem. But only for the purpose of approaching Krishna, you know.
Thank you.
It was nice, as we are just done. It was very nice to talk to you. When I see the picture behind you, I'm definitely getting an appetite. So
I have a last question, Maharaj.
I'm just a poor boy, Maharaj.
You mentioned that we should see everything as Krishna, as Prabhupada said, every moving and non-moving is Krishna, aeroplane, fighting, all these things is Krishna. But when it comes to the four defects of human beings, tendency to make mistake, cheating, illusion, and imperfect senses, can we also see the four defects as Krishna?
The point is this. Say, for example, my father beat me. He has beaten me. Actually, it's a reality when I was a young boy, when I did something wrong. And so I was very angry about that for a long time. But then I realized that somebody may do this to you, somebody may be doing that to you. Somebody steals your money. Somebody beats you on the head. Somebody kicks you in the back. You know, the experience like this. And generally we bear a grudge against this person. We are angry with this person. We can't forgive him. Because we say, why does he do that? I don't understand it. But you should understand that actually he's just the instruments in the hands of God. We are suffering. If you beat people in one life, you will be beaten in the next life. It is called fate, the fate of a person. right? Fate, our fate to suffer and to enjoy is not casual. It's not accidental. It's not unfair. So the person who beats us, say, my father beat me, when I realized that actually he was just the instrument in the hands of God, in the instruments of my karma, actually. Because you cannot suffer in material life unless you did something wrong. Are we still online?
Yes, Maharaj, we are online. Yes, we are here.
We wrap it up. I thank you so much. Hope you see us again. I wish you all the best. God love you. And stay with it. In this endeavor, there's no loss. You cannot lose if you stay with it. Under all circumstances, never you have to burn this into your heart. Never will I leave this movement. Okay, all the best. Hare Krishna.
Okay, we ask all devotees to kindly unmute yourselves. Let's chant Hare Krishna for Maharaj for coming.
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Hare
Ram, Hare Hare.
Where's Krishna? Okay.
Okay, we ask all devotees to
Rama.
kindly unmute yourselves. Let's chant Hare Krishna for Maharaj for coming.
Hare
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare